Hi everyone, I'm Michael George in for Vladimir Duthier. We are watching all the news happening in the U.S. and around the world. If it's happening on these monitors behind me, we will bring it to you live. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following for you this morning. President Biden has blocked Japan-based Nippon Steel from buying U.S. steel. How this could impact not only relations with a U.S. ally, but also the global economy. New Orleans' famous Bourbon Street has reopened after the deadly terror attack on New Year's Day. A look at the new heavily fortified French Quarter. And a fight for Speaker of the House. Mike Johnson gets the backing of President-elect Trump, but could a small band of Republicans cost him the gavel? This is CBS News 24/7. Well, it's a busy first day back on Capitol Hill. In just a few hours, new members of the Senate will be sworn in by Vice President Kamala Harris, and Republicans will take control of the upper chamber. Meanwhile, members of Congress will vote today to decide if House Speaker Mike Johnson will retain the gavel this session. Earlier this morning, he shared a message for his colleagues ahead of the vote.
My simple message to my colleagues is make suggestions about process improvements. We're open to that at all times, but I don't make deals with anyone. There's no quid pro quo here. I don't do anything in exchange for a vote other than commit to make this institution work as effectively and efficiently as possible.
And CBS News political reporter Torian Small is on Capitol Hill with us. Torian, thanks for joining us. First off, how close is this vote going to get? Is Speaker Johnson in trouble here?
Yeah, I would say so. And just based off of those comments that he just made there, it's clear that there are some backdoor deals trying to happen. In fact, Congressman Tim Burchett of Tennessee confirmed to us that members of the House Freedom Caucus are eyeing a chairmanship for Congressman Chip Roy of Texas for the House Rules Committee. Speaker Johnson there saying that he's not in the mood to be doing deals at this point, but he is open to hearing from other members of his conference about how this process should move going forward. Now, when it comes to numbers, it doesn't appear like they are in Speaker Johnson's favor. To remind you, in November, Republicans picked up 220 seats in the House. Republican Matt Gaetz of Florida retired last session and decided he won't be returning for this one. That means there are now 219 seats available for House Republicans here. Democrats have 215. So the magic number is 1. Johnson can only afford to lose one Republican vote, and right now we have at least a handful of members saying they're non-committal at best, others saying they just absolutely cannot support Johnson this time around.
Well, Torian, the election certification is just days away. Is there pressure on Republicans to essentially get their house in order?
Yeah, and this will be the test of Donald Trump's lasting influence over the Republican Party. What's interesting about this is it's members of the far-right flank that appear to be at odds with the agenda or will of Donald Trump, like Chip Roy there, like Thomas Massie of Kentucky. Those are Republicans, I should mention, who did support his primary opponent, Ron DeSantis, in the primary, but have ultimately come around. They're at odds with his pick for Speaker, which is Mike Johnson, because they disagree with how he's handled not just this process so far when it comes to committee appointments, but also with the continuing resolution. Donald Trump wanted House Republicans, both in September and in December, to not play ball with Democrats, to allow a government shutdown to happen in order to get his agenda through early. That didn't happen, obviously, because of the help of Democrats that Johnson was willing to work with.
Now, can you talk us through the swearing-in process that's about to take place?
Yeah, on the Senate side, it will see new members sworn in by President of the Senate, which we know as Vice President Kamala Harris. Could be an awkward situation considering she did run for president and lost in many of the members that she's swearing in because Republicans have overtaken that chamber. Ran really with her at the top of their messaging, saying that she would be bad for the country moving forward. She now joins Richard Nixon, Al Gore as failed presidential bids, returning to swear in the Senate, although she won't be returning to the White House. So that's happening on the Senate side. When it comes to the House, swearing in won't happen until a speaker is elected. That's not clear at the moment if that will happen tonight. But as we saw with Kevin McCarthy, as he went through 15 rounds of this, it could be a while before House members at least are sworn in.
All right, a lot of things up in the air. Torian Small, thank you. Now, on the backdrop of that House Speaker vote, there are 17 days until President-elect Donald Trump steps into office. CBS News political reporter Libby Cathy has more from the Trump campaign in West Palm Beach, Florida. Libby, now, House Speaker Mike Johnson did get a Trump endorsement. What can you tell us about their relationship, and how big is that endorsement?
That's right, Michael. Hugely influential endorsement. And we actually just heard again from President-elect Donald Trump this morning reinforce that endorsement of Speaker Johnson. Posting to Truth Social, Trump said, "Johnson is a fine man of great ability who is very close to having 100% support," seemingly nodding at the fact that Johnson does still have a few holdouts. And we're waiting to see the math on if he will be able to secure this vote after the first round or if it will take more. But Trump reinforcing that Johnson is his man today over Truth Social. This after he formally endorsed Johnson on Monday. Johnson visited Mar-a-Lago on Wednesday night to have strategy sessions with President Trump. Trump also told reporters outside of his New Year's Eve bash that he thinks Johnson is the man for the job and also the only man he thinks can get enough support right now. So Johnson and Trump have had a good relationship, they say, a good working relationship over the last 2 years. And it's important for Trump, as Torian just laid out there, to have this speaker vote go through today. So on Monday, the House of Representatives can certify his electoral victory. That's why he wants to see Johnson elevated and elevated today at that. But Johnson and Trump meeting Wednesday at Mar-a-Lago for those strategy sessions. Trump re-elevating that endorsement today, and Johnson also thanking him over social media, trying to put out that message and show that public support, Michael.
And also, Libby, we've been following a lot of major news events like the aftermath of the deadly terror attack in New Orleans, that Cybertruck explosion in Las Vegas at a Trump property. So how is the Trump camp reacting, and are they concerned about Inauguration Day security?
Yeah, well, the Trump transition team responding, really taking cues from the president-elect and how he has responded, really making those incidents an issue of immigration to the detest of some. But Trump and the transition team saying that all the inauguration events are going to go on as planned, that Trump will be inaugurated come January 20th. Now, there's also 3 days of events around that inauguration where they will have beefed up security. The inaugural ball is a national security event designated by Homeland Security. So there's already going to be an elevated security presence that week. On top of that, next week, as we just mentioned, on Monday, you're going to have the certification of Trump's victory. Later on in the week, it's going to be former President Jimmy Carter's funeral in Washington. He will lie in state at the Capitol. So several events in Washington that are going to have elevated security, including that inauguration. While the Trump transition team has had many qualms with the Biden administration, they are projecting confidence that these events will go on as normal. And that does include a rally the night before the inauguration in Washington, D.C., Michael.
Yeah, Libby, let's talk about that rally that Donald Trump is planning before the inauguration. What do we know about that right now?
Yeah, Michael, so this is his big victory rally. It's the first time we're going to see Trump back on the rally stage since Election Day. This will be the afternoon before Inauguration Day, Sunday, January 19th in Washington, D.C. at Capital One Arena. That venue can fit some 20,000 guests, so expected to be a big event, and we are staying tuned for special guests, Michael.
All right, Libby Cathy in West Palm Beach, thanks. Turning to the White House now, President Biden has blocked the proposed $14.9 billion takeover of U.S. steel by Japanese rival Nippon Steel. In a statement released this morning, the president said he was blocking the deal to, quote, ensure that now and long into the future, America has a strong domestically owned and operated steel industry. Joining us now for more on this is CBS News Homeland Security and Justice reporter Nicole Skanga. Nicole, what more can you tell us about why the president blocked this deal?
Yeah, Michael, good to be with you. A $14.9 billion with a B, a dollar takeover of U.S. Steel by Nippon Steel, a decision that comes after weeks and months of speculation here. This is an iconic American company whose sale to a foreign buyer the president has at least subtly signaled that he is opposed to now for weeks. But the decision coming today, I want to read to you part of that statement that we just showed to viewers. The president saying, a strong domestically owned and operated steel industry represents an essential national security priority, and it's critical for resilient supply chains. He goes on to say that he's taking action to block the deal because Of course, his solemn responsibility as president is to ensure that now and long into the future, America has a strong domestically owned and operated steel industry, but just exercising an enormous amount of executive power here. The timing is also notable, as of course the president will depart the White House in just a few weeks. You know, a federal committee had reviewed this transaction. It's called CFIUS. It stands for the Committee on Foreign Investment in the United States. And they had issued a report just prior to Christmas, but ultimately determined that they were not going to recommend that the president block the deal or greenlight the deal. And that left the final decision, you know, with Biden. And then, of course, all of this not happening in a vacuum, still a concern about jobs. Nippon Steel had promised no layoffs or plant closures during the term of the current union contract, which does expire in September of 2026. Still, you know, there were concerns about the company shifting jobs from the United States, shifting them from union facilities to non-union facilities, and USW, the steelworkers union, had ultimately come out against the deal. There were other unions that were in support of it, but most notably, you know, that union, which claims over 1 million members, supported President Biden during the 2020 election. So that's notable here as well, Michael.
Nicole, let's talk big picture. What repercussions could this decision have between Japan and the U.S.?
Yeah, well, this is a decision with wide-ranging implications for the U.S. economy. It could also send a signal to other potential foreign investors who are looking to acquire American companies. Hey, you know, not so fast. Certainly, it could shake our relationship with Japan, a close ally of the United States. Certainly, some of the president's advisors in the days leading up to this decision warning that rejecting such a sizable acquisition by a Japanese company could in fact harm the relationship between Japan and the United States. And even as the administration had cited potential national security concerns regarding this deal, there were certainly other outside independent analysts who were skeptical of that sort of rationale, citing politics instead. Even back in April of this year, the Japanese prime minister came out in support of this deal, arguing that it would only increase, steel production capacity and increase jobs here in the United States, growing more jobs. We could see in the coming weeks, Michael, litigation by both U.S. Steel and Nippon Steel. But it's back to the drawing board for U.S. Steel in terms of if it wants to continue shopping for buyers here or act as a standalone company. But this is a company that has not too many financial resources in terms of putting those back into its steelmaking furnaces in Pennsylvania and in Gary, Indiana, and they've made that clear.
All right, Nicole Skanga, thanks for breaking that down for us. Well, the White House just announced that President Biden and the First Lady will travel to New Orleans on Monday. Now, this comes as the FBI is combing through evidence from the deadly New Year's Day attack that killed 14 people. Their focus now, an Airbnb rental where the attacker may have been staying. CBS News national reporter Katie Weiss is live in New Orleans this morning. Katie, thanks for joining us. What is the latest on the investigation at that home?
Well, good morning. We're learning a few more details this morning, hour by hour, constantly getting more information. One of the things that we do know is that the FBI says that the suspect did act alone. No apparent help here in New Orleans, at least, from anyone to carry out this attack. We also know that while the investigation has been cleared here at this scene on Bourbon Street, there is still very much an active investigation, as you mentioned, at that short-term rental property that he was staying at here in New Orleans before carrying out the attack. We know that several specialized engineer teams, bomb teams, have been deployed to that residence to go take a closer look at the evidence that was discovered there. We're still working to find out more information about the specifics of the kind of evidence that has been found. But we do know that, according to the FBI, the suspect did plant two different explosive devices right here in the French Quarter, not far from Bourbon Street, where this attack took place. Those explosive devices were placed, concealed rather, into coolers and then kind of put to the side on a sidewalk right here in the French Quarter. We know that some passerbys even took a look at them before the attack took place. We have seen some of that on surveillance video, according to officials. So some very interesting developments. Some sources, law enforcement sources, do tell us that those pipe bombs were rudimentary and they were made with things like shrapnel and other metal type objects. So a lot more details will be coming out, and we'll be standing by for anything else that the officials will be willing to provide every morning or every hour this morning. Michael.
Now, Katie, Bourbon Street back open yesterday, just in time for the Sugar Bowl. And while it was safe and a lot of people had a good time, there are a lot of new safety precautions in place. Talk to us about that.
Yes. Well, you know, I was here all day yesterday, too, covering the developments as they were unfolding. And once Bourbon Street was reopened, it was very clear just how intense and beefed up the security is here in the French Quarter. I mean, you cannot walk a single block without seeing some type of law enforcement officer. That's definitely a different type of scene than maybe before this attack took place, where you might see an officer every, few blocks or so. Also, we have seen helicopter patrols as well. Yesterday, during the Sugar Bowl, I saw helicopters circling around the Superdome to make sure to keep an eye on things from an aerial point of view. Also, even beyond the French Quarter, there are several roads that are blocked to through traffic. I live not too far from here. It was hard for me to drive home. It took me a lot longer to get back to my apartment simply because of all of these closed roads. So a lot of measures have been taking place. We also know finally that bomb-sniffing dogs have been taking a look at the French Quarter as well. So police are assuring people, if you're coming here for any kind of fun event, tourist event, you will be safe. That's what they say.
All right, Katie Weiss on the ground in New Orleans. Thanks. Well, an Arctic blast is coming this weekend. A winter storm is expected to bring frigid temperatures, ice and snow to parts of the central and eastern U.S. Areas of the Midwest could see up to a foot of snow, while mid-Atlantic and Northeast states could get up to 6 inches. For more on the forecast, let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore. Grant.
Hey, good morning, Michael. Look, it's a lot to track across the country. In fact, a good portion of the country is going to see some impacts from this winter storm. This morning, we're just tracking a little bit of a weak system moving across the Appalachians this morning, but that cold Arctic air is beginning to dive in advance of this developing low pressure system that will pull out of the Intermountain West out there into the Rockies as we make our way through the next 24 hours or so. We are tracking that lake effect snow right now. There's that weak snow system that's moving across the Appalachians, but watch as we go into the weekend. We'll talk more about this coming up. Big impacts, guys. Ice, snow, and even severe weather. Michael, George, we'll send things back to you for now.
All right, Grant Gilmore, thanks. Police in South Korea halted an attempt to arrest the country's president after a dramatic standoff. We'll have the latest details next. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. All right, we have new details this morning about the man behind the Cybertruck explosion outside of Trump Hotel in Las Vegas. Police say he was an Army veteran who took his own life before his rented vehicle exploded. CBS News correspondent Adam Yamaguchi has been following the latest from Colorado Springs, where investigators have been searching his home. Adam, what are we learning?
That's right. Investigators were here at his home up until yesterday or so. It's not entirely clear what they may have recovered or learned about the suspect. What we do know, again, was that he died of a self-inflicted gunshot wound to the head just seconds before his vehicle, that rented Tesla Cybertruck, had exploded in front of the valet area of that hotel, all of which took about 17 or so seconds. Also, what we're also learning about his background, he was a very decorated Green Beret, served in the military for 19 years, received 5 Bronze Stars. And so all of this just creates so much surprise and mystery about who this man was and why he did what he did.
Adam, what do we know about what investigators found inside the vehicle?
So they were able to recover a few personal effects, his military ID passport, a phone, smartwatch, as well as 2 handguns that he had just recently purchased legally, one of which he used to kill himself. What they also found in the vehicle were firework mortars, as well as a gas canister and camp fuel. Again, all of this was very surprising to investigators, as well as to some of the folks that he serve time with. Given the fact that he was a Green Beret, these operators are specialists in guerrilla warfare tactics. So there was a lot of surprise as to just how crude these devices were.
Adam, what are people in that neighborhood saying about the suspect?
So the neighbors here didn't really seem to know him very well. One neighbor who spoke out to the press said that he seemed friendly. She would sometimes see him out on the street and exchange hellos, but there was really wasn't that much familiarity with him.
All right, Adam Yamaguchi, thank you so much for your reporting. We appreciate it. We are also following developments out of South Korea this morning, where police were forced to suspend their attempt to arrest impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol this morning. They were blocked by presidential guards, leading to an hours-long standoff. Yoona Koo with our partners at BBC News has more from Seoul.
The investigative body in South Korea has made an initial attempt to arrest the country's president for the first time, but eventually gave up after more than 5 hours of standoff on Friday. Corruption Investigation Office for High-Ranking Officials, or CIO, has been investigating on President Yoon Suk-yeol's short-lived attempt to bring the country under martial law earlier last month. They sought arrest and search warrants on charges of insurrection, one of the rare offenses for which a sitting South Korean president does not have immunity. After the court issued the warrants on Tuesday, the CIO mobilized around 100 of its officers, including the police, to the presidential residence in Seoul on early Friday morning. However, they were met by an overwhelming number of military and security service personnel working for the president, who formed a human wall to block the officers' entry. The development was met with jubilation by pro-Yoon supporters gathered near the presidential residence. They celebrated by chanting, "We won and saved the president." Meanwhile, opposition supporters expressed strong disappointment. The CIO stated it would take time to review its next steps. It remains possible that another arrest attempt will be made before the warrants expire next Monday. Also, the office may seek an extension or reissue the warrants.
All right, that was Yoona Koo reporting. Well, U.S. Surgeon General Vivek Murthy is calling for cancer warning labels to be added to beverages containing alcohol. Murthy says the label should include details that show that consuming alcohol heightens the risk of breast and colon cancer. Warning labels on alcoholic drinks haven't been updated since 1988. Murthy says Congress has the ability to make the change. And we are continuing to follow the latest on the investigation into the deadly terror attack in New Orleans. Coming up, we'll hear from the attacker's brother. Stay with us. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Welcome back to CBS News 24/7. Here's a look at some of the top stories we're following right now. Federal courts will not refer allegations that Supreme Court Justice Clarence Thomas may have violated ethics laws to the Justice Department. Thomas has agreed to follow updated requirements on reporting trips and gifts he previously said he wasn't required to disclose. Some of the trips he took were paid for by Republican mega-donor Harlan Crow. The Supreme Court adopted its first code of ethics in 2023, but it lacks a means of enforcement. The prosecution in Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's corruption trial has agreed to pause for 2 weeks. The request was made by Netanyahu's team because the prime minister underwent prostate removal surgery. He was released from the hospital yesterday and will face a period of recovery. And President Biden will honor 7 veterans of the Vietnam and Korean Wars with the Medal of Honor in a ceremony at the White House today. Kenneth J. David, who served in Vietnam, will be there in person. The families of deceased recipients will accept the award on their behalf. Now, we are learning more about the man behind the New Year's Day terror attack in New Orleans. The brother of the perpetrator spoke with CBS News. He discussed everything from his siblings' faith to his relationship with their father. CBS News reporter Jason Allen conducted that interview and is live in Texas. Jason, thanks for joining with us. You spoke with this young man for nearly 30 minutes. What did he tell you?
Michael, good morning. It's good to be with you this morning. This was a long interview with Abdur Rahim. This is a family of 5 boys. Abdur is the youngest, his brother Shamsuddin, the oldest. So with that kind of a spread in age, they didn't grow up together. They didn't get to know each other especially well when they were younger. But in the last year and a half, there was something that happened in the family. Their father had a stroke. That required the boys to spend some more time together caring for their father. And so over the last 18 months or so, they did get to know each other a lot better. And Abdur told us that he saw his brother as someone who was smart, who was charismatic, someone who had enjoyed his time in the Army, that it gave him the discipline in life that he felt was necessary. And you'll hear him tell us there were really no red flags or anything that popped up that indicated something like this attack was about to happen.
Now, Jason, authorities have been talking a lot about the suspect's radicalization. What did his brother tell you about his relationship with his faith?
Well, Michael, this family, the boys in the family, they were all raised as Muslims. So that was Shamsuddin, who was raised as a Muslim, and Abdur as well. Now, at times, he told us, he had been away from the faith and come back to it. More recently, though, Abdur told us that his brother had come back to the faith a little more fervently. And it wasn't something maybe that they had talked about. But Abdur definitely noticed some changes in the way that Shamsuddin had approached his faith. He had become far more conservative. He had changed the way he dressed, in dress slacks and dress shoes. He had removed tattoos, and he had talked to his brother a little bit about just changing some of the things he did in his life. I think we have a portion of that interview if we can play it.
He's been a practicing Muslim since he was a kid and everything, and I think he took a step away from the religion at some point in his life, and then he came back into it. Maybe this time around he was going to take it a little more seriously. He didn't party anymore, he didn't drink, he didn't do drugs, he didn't have sex outside of marriage, things like that.
And so, Michael, I asked him, if you look back and you rethink those conversations you had with your brother, is there anything now that stands out to you as different, anything that indicates it was taking a more serious turn? And he told me, no, there's really nothing like that leads him from what he knew about his brother to what has happened here in the last few days.
There are investigations in Texas related to this case. What's the latest on those?
There are a couple of different parts of this investigation, Michael. One of them was here, and this was the neighborhood where Shamsuddin was living for the last year and a half or so. The FBI and the sheriff's office has finished that part of the investigation. The next part of that is figuring out, when was he radicalized? Did that happen during his service time in Afghanistan? That's something that our CBS team has determined is unlikely, that it likely happened years after he served in the Army in Afghanistan. In fact, our colleague Charlie D'Agata was pointing out 15 years between the time he was in Afghanistan and here. It would be a long time to remain dormant if something like that happened there. So then it gets to talking to his family and his friends here. In fact, even as my colleague Andy Garcia was in Beaumont, where the brother and the family live, that's about hour and a half to 2 hours drive east of where we are in Houston. Even as he was there talking with the brother, the FBI showed up, 3 FBI investigators, to have that conversation, very much the same conversation that I had with Abdur. What did you know about your brother? What were the conversations like? And Abdur told me that his answers were very much the same, that he respected his brother, he knew him as smart. He had had some instances of stress in his life, especially with his last divorce, which had been some emotional and financial strain. But really, as he looks back on it, there was nothing that indicated a radicalization to him. But that is something investigators will be trying to figure out as to when that happened and maybe by who.
All right, Jason Allen in Houston, thanks for your reporting. Now, the National Transportation Safety Board is investigating yesterday's fiery plane crash in Southern California. The 2 people on board were killed and another 19 people were injured when the plane slammed into a furniture warehouse. CBS News Los Angeles reporter Cara Finstrom is live in Fullerton this morning. Cara, you are at the scene right now where people had to be evacuated yesterday. What are you hearing from witnesses?
Well, first off, the NTSB did just arrive minutes ago here at the scene this morning, and they tell me they will be going inside and working also to remove the plane. It's still in the middle of this warehouse. Did not have much other information for us at this hour, but you can see the warehouse behind us. The FAA, they did release their preliminary report this morning, and that included information about the 19 workers who were inside when the plane crashed, 11 suffering serious injuries, some were burned. Here's what we heard from one of the witnesses.
All the fuel came down on him. Just his shirt was burned, his shoes was burned, his face.
I mean, it looked like something from a movie.
Just horrific. And he does say that worker fortunately appeared to be sitting up afterwards. And this video, you can just see flames engulf the warehouse after that plane punched a hole through the roof of this furniture manufacturing business. Investigators are saying the plane had climbed to about 900 feet before the pilot requested to come back immediately. He was cleared to land, and then the plane crashed about 1,000 feet short of the runway. The pilot flying a kit-built, or what's called homemade or experimental RV-10 aircraft. Then at the news conference, the NTSB said it was a popular model. That was a news conference that was held last night. They don't yet know what went wrong. We can tell you that registered owner of the plane, he is from Huntington Beach. We don't know if he was flying the plane at the time. We don't have any information yet about the two people who were killed.
Also, really terrifying images and stories we're hearing. Cara Finstrom, thank you. Well, New York drivers commuting into parts of Manhattan will have to shell out a little more money starting this Sunday as the city's congestion pricing program begins. Meanwhile, New Jersey officials are vowing to stop it before it starts. Our Christina Fan explains what commuters need to know.
Good morning. Officials in New Jersey are not giving up their fight to stop what they call a cash grab by the state of New York. A court hearing is scheduled for 3 o'clock this afternoon, where attorneys for the Garden State will ask a judge to issue a temporary restraining order to try and kill congestion pricing before it begins. Federal Judge Leo Gordon will hear those arguments again in just a few hours. This comes after he issued a lengthy ruling on Monday, writing that regulators need to specify how much money communities in New Jersey will get to mitigate pollution, but did not explicitly state whether or not the controversial toll could take effect as planned. Again, until the court is able to offer some more clarity, the MTA is still preparing to implement congestion pricing beginning Sunday morning. The toll will cost most drivers $9 more to enter Manhattan below 60th Street. Reporting from Jersey City, Christina Fan, CBS News, New York.
Well, the Pittsburgh area is seeing some winter weather that's making travel tricky this morning. Let's see how CBS News Pittsburgh is covering the story.
And the roads are definitely covered on the main roads as well as the side roads at this time as more snow is falling in the area. But there is kind of a smooth flow of traffic. It seems that people are driving slow as they are going through the area. You can see that there is a plow right over here coming right by in the opposite direction. So they're trying to clear the roads. They've at least all morning when we first came out to the city of Washington, they were very much covered in downtown, and quickly within an hour or so they were clear. Now you can see, though, with more snow falling, they're getting a little bit more covered again, including on the main roads over here. So we're on Route 40 right now, just to give you a little bit of context of where we are. Snow-covered roads. And at this time, though, it's still going to be slick, even if once the roads get a little bit more clear, because as you can see, the plows are coming by. Just still remember, they're still going to be wet. It's still going to be slick. The temperatures are decreasing. They're low out here, so there's still a possibility of black ice. So make sure to take your time, take it slow if you're planning to head out today. For now, reporting live from the Mobile Weather Lab, Lauren Linder, Kitty K, TV News.
And that was CBS News Pittsburgh reporting. Now let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with another look at the national forecast. Grant, how are things looking?
Hey, look, that storm system that's moving through western Pennsylvania and the Pittsburgh area, that's what's heading east. It's kind of an appetizer, if you will, for the larger storm system that will be traversing the country as we go through the weekend. There's the snow moving through the Ohio Valley into western Pennsylvania. The Appalachians getting quite a bit of snow from this as well. Higher elevations could see closer to a foot of snow out of this. Again, this is a relatively weak system. Let's go west and let's find the stronger system that's just now moving into the Pacific Northwest, bringing them with more gusty winds, high elevation snowfall. This storm system is going to be diving out of the Rocky Mountains into the Plain States as we head into the weekend, bringing significant impacts, and not just winter weather impacts, but we're talking about the chance for some severe weather as we go from Saturday into Sunday, as this system really dives to the south. And that storm system is actually moving into some cold Arctic air out ahead of it, and that's why we have that winter weather threat on the northern side of it. and relatively mild conditions from the south that will be clashing across the nation's heartland as we head through the next couple of days. There's the radar. There's the snow across the Appalachians this morning. That will move east into the northeast, bringing some areas up to 1 to 2 inches of snow up there right here in Philadelphia. But let's talk about this weekend storm system. This is going to be probably the first significant nationwide storm system or winter storm that we'll see this year. Multiple impacts coming from this. Heavy snow to the north. You've got dangerous freezing rain just to the south of that heavier snow. And then you've got rain moving across the deep south all the way through the weekend. It moves into the northeast and mid-Atlantic as we go from Sunday into Monday. Now, I do think this ice is going to be a significant part of this storm. Some places could see a ½ inch to even an inch of that ice accretion. That's that freezing rain that forms on the trees and power lines, resulting in a lot of power outages. So we'll have to watch that, but also the heavier snow accumulation to the north of that. Some places in Kansas could see 15 to nearly 20 inches of snow. And then you see that band of the heavy snow all the way into the Appalachians and then into portions of the mid-Atlantic. Now, still some uncertainty on exactly where that low pressure system is going to track, and that ultimately will determine where those highest snow totals will be. Regardless, severe impacts on travel as we go from Sunday into early next week. Now, we're not done with winter weather by any means. After that storm system moves through, our temperatures are really going into the freezer as we go through the first half of next week. Look at some of these forecasts. This is into Tuesday. High temperatures well below normal for the eastern half of the United States. Some places like Tampa near 78 degrees, but watch what happens as we go toward the end of next week. Those temperatures get even colder. We're talking about temperatures through the first half, if not the whole week next week in the eastern half of the U.S., running 10 to 15 degrees below normal. Michael, back to you.
Oof, cold start to the year. Grant Gilmore, thanks.
Yep.
Well, memorials begin tomorrow in Georgia for former President Jimmy Carter. Up next, how the country will honor his life and legacy. We'll be right back. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Well, the next 6 days will be dedicated to honoring former President Jimmy Carter. Funeral events begin in his hometown of Plains, Georgia tomorrow. CBS News senior national correspondent Mark Strassman has the details.
America's final salute to Jimmy Carter is about to begin. 6 days of public remembrances that starts here in Plains tomorrow morning. A hearse carrying Mr. Carter's body will drive past his childhood home, and a farm bell there will toll 39 times for America's 39th president. From there, on Saturday and Sunday, Mr. Carter's body will lie in repose at the Carter Center in Atlanta, where people will have their first chance to pay their respects. From there, the body goes to Washington, D.C., where Mr. Carter will lie in state inside the Capitol Rotunda. And then on Thursday, the official state funeral. Among the people giving eulogies will be President Biden. Carter will then have one final homecoming. He's going to be buried here in Plains next to his wife of 77 years, Rosalind Carter.
And when Jimmy Carter was elected president in 1976, his first grandson, Jason Carter, was just 1 year old. Jason is now the chair of the Carter Center board. He spoke to CBS Mornings about his grandfather's life and legacy.
So this week is going to be a celebration of your grandfather's life. What is the primary thing that you want everyone to remember about him?
You know, I think for us and my family, we just knew him as a grandfather, right? And we've shared him with the country and the world in certain ways. But I think people really connect with him because he was always just a regular guy. I think they see themselves in the love story that occurred between my two grandparents for 77 years. But really just that personal connection of this is somebody from a small town in South Georgia who was a peanut farmer who ultimately became the president of the United States. It's a pretty remarkable American story.
Jason, you are a part of a small club that grew up in and around the White House, and there are images of you at the South Lawn of the White House during that annual Easter egg roll. What are some of your memories of those times?
So, I remember being at the White House when I was a kid, a kindergartner, going to visit my grandparents, and just it happened to be that they lived at the White House. We had snowman building competitions and egg rolls and all that. And, we have all these little, memories of watching football games and sliding down ramps and these laundry carts, little things that kids do maybe at their grandparents' house, just happen to be a more formidable house.
And you can watch the final tributes to Jimmy Carter right here on CBS News 24/7. Again, on Saturday, a motorcade will travel through Carter's hometown of Plains, Georgia. He'll then lie in repose at the Carter Center in Atlanta. On Tuesday, the former president will lie in state in the U.S. Capitol ahead of a state funeral at the Washington National Cathedral on Thursday. He'll then return to Plains, Georgia to be laid to rest on his family's property alongside his wife of 77 years. We'll be right back. You're streaming CBS News 24/7. Well, here it is. Awards season kicks off this weekend in Los Angeles with the 82nd Golden Globes airing right here on CBS. Our Danya Backus has a preview.
The red carpet is rolled out, and the stage is set for Hollywood's Party of the Year. The Golden Globes Awards will be hosted by comedian and actress Nikki Glaser. She makes history as the first woman to solo host the show. She says she's been rehearsing since November.
On Sunday, when I'm done, when I walk off stage from the monologue, to just go backstage after that and just feel like, you know what, whatever it was, good or bad, I couldn't have done better.
The Globes is not only the first award show of this season, but the largest one to honor the best in film and television. Gray Drake is an entertainment journalist and film correspondent.
The Golden Globes definitely sets a tone. They bring the fun, and if they deliver the fun, then everyone feels like they're in their zone. Award season is going to be great.
Are you English? Netflix's Emilia Perez leads the film categories this year with 10 nominations, including Best Comedy or Musical.
It did not surprise me at all that Emilia Perez has the most nominations this year, because what an unbelievably audacious movie.
We're getting a sneak peek at the stage where the awards will be handed out on Sunday, and also a glimpse of why they call this the Party of the Year. That's because celebrities like Coleman Domingo and Melissa McCarthy will be sitting at the same table eating a gourmet meal and drinking lots of champagne. Producers say this year's show is specially tailored to the viewer.
We want you to feel like you're at the Party of the Year, not just watching the Party of the Year.
Why are you doing this?
We're going to get a star.
On the television side, The Bear leads with 5 nominations, followed by Only Murders in the Building and Shogun with 4 nominations each. Danya Backus, CBS News, Beverly Hills, California.
And you can watch the 82nd Golden Globes hosted by Nikki Glaser Sunday right here on CBS. Coverage starts at 8 p.m. Eastern. Let's bring in CBS News Philadelphia meteorologist Grant Gilmore with the last look at the national forecast. Grant.
Hey, Michael, look, by Sunday, most of the eastern half of the United States may just want to chill inside and let this winter storm go by and watch the Golden Globes. Here's what we've got out there. Cold weather, Arctic air diving in from the north. Meanwhile, a little bit of a snow system moving through the Great Lakes into the Appalachians. But out west, we've got another one of those Pacific storm systems moving ashore. That system is going to really strengthen as it moves across the Rocky Mountains and into the plains as we make our way through the weekend. Multiple impacts from this storm. We've got snow to the north. You've got ice, that freezing rain right in the nation's heartland. And then you've got the potential for severe weather to the south as it starts to tap into some of that Gulf of Mexico moisture. See there, by around Sunday morning, we start to see that storm system really crank up, producing some heavy snow totals from Kansas into Missouri across the Midwestern states as the system moves to the east through the day on Sunday. Now, watch as we go through Sunday night into Monday morning. It moves into the mid-Atlantic. Some places like Philly, south into D.C., Baltimore could also pick up on some shovelable snow. Michael, back to you.
All right, Grant, thanks. We appreciate it. That does it for me, but stay right where you are. After the break, Elizabeth Cook is live from San Francisco with all the breaking news from coast to coast, including the countdown to that House Speaker vote. This is CBS News 24/7.